You're wasting your energy chasing them, trying to prove your worth when the real power move is silence. Every day they go without you. Without your presence, your attention, your validation, something shifts. At first, they might not notice, but over time, that silence begins to work like a slow poison, slipping under their skin and filling the empty spaces they never thought would exist. The comfort they once felt with you starts to crack piece by piece, replaced by a void they can't quite name. Time doesn't just pass, it reveals. It strips away distractions, forcing them to see what they tried to ignore when they walked away. The longer you stay quiet, the more that silence turns into a mirror, and in that mirror, the truth stares back at them. You weren't just an option, you were the prize. They believed they had control, that they could walk away and never look back, that you'd be waiting, desperate for another chance. But instead of chasing, you stepped back. Instead of proving your worth, you let time do the talking. And time is ruthless. It whispers doubts, exposes regrets, and amplifies loneliness. What once seemed like an easy choice now starts to feel like a mistake. This isn't about revenge, it's about power. Not in a manipulative way, but in the kind of strength that shakes their world. It's about standing so firmly in your own value that they begin to question everything. Not because you played a game, but because you became someone they were never prepared to lose. Think of it like the ocean pulling away from the shore. At first, they might not notice the tide shifting. They might even feel relieved, thinking they're free to roam the sand without the waves at their feet. But as time passes, that absence becomes undeniable. The air grows dry, the heat intensifies, and they start longing for the very thing they took for granted. That's what happens when you stop chasing. They realize what they had, but by then, the tide is already gone. Silence is powerful because it demands reflection. Without the constant noise of your presence, they are left alone with their thoughts. The longer the silence stretches, the louder their minds become. Every place you once were, every moment they once dismissed starts to resurface. The absence turns into a weight they can't shake off. And that's when they realize they didn't just lose someone, they lost the one. You see, people don't regret losing something replaceable. They regret losing what was rare. When you carry yourself with dignity, when you refuse to beg, when you choose self-respect over desperation, you become unforgettable. They may try to fill the void with distractions, with temporary connections, but nothing quite fits because you weren't just another name in their life. You were the standard. Let time break them. Let it work in silence. Let it carve the lesson they refused to learn before. And as they begin to understand what they lost, you won't need to lift a finger because the real power was never in proving your worth to them. It was in knowing it for yourself. Time will tell the clock is their worst enemy. When you step back, you don't need to argue, you don't need to explain, you don't need to justify a single thing. You let time do what it does best, create space. And space is powerful because in that silence, their minds start working overtime. At first, maybe they feel relieved. Maybe they even convince themselves this is what they wanted. Freedom, space, room to breathe. And at first glance, silence feels comforting, like the quiet after a long day of noise. But silence is tricky. It never stays gentle for long. Soon enough, that comforting quiet becomes a deafening emptiness, a silence so loud it's impossible to ignore. Picture this. Imagine walking into your favorite cafe after hours. Chairs are empty, lights are dimmed, and the hum of conversation is missing. Everything is exactly as it was, but without life, without warmth. That's exactly how it feels when someone who once filled their world suddenly pulls away. Your presence once brought comfort, laughter, stability. Now your absence brings nothing but hollow echoes. The silence you've left behind doesn't just remain still. It grows, it expands. What began as a whisper quickly becomes a scream they can't shut out. Every quiet moment becomes a painful reminder. The phone stays silent. Notifications no longer flash with your name. The small daily exchanges they once took for granted suddenly vanish. They find themselves reaching instinctively, only to grasp at empty air. And with every passing day, they start asking themselves uncomfortable questions. Why haven't they reached out yet? Have they already moved on? Did I underestimate how important they were to me? But for you, silence works differently. A Stoic, someone who has mastered self-control and emotional discipline, finds strength in solitude. You don't fear silence, you welcome it. You know that silence isn't emptiness. It's space to grow, to reflect, to become more rooted in who you truly are. As Marcus Aurelius wisely said, nowhere can one find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in one's own soul. You live by this wisdom, embracing solitude not as punishment but as power. They, however, face a different struggle. Unlike you, they haven't built their sense of self independently. Their identity was partly tied to your presence, even if they weren't fully aware of it. Perhaps they believed they had the upper hand, that they could walk away easily. But the truth reveals itself when reality catches up. Your absence wasn't just a small change. It altered their entire emotional landscape. Suddenly, the quiet they thought they wanted feels oppressive, relentless. Imagine removing a cornerstone from a well-built house. At first glance, nothing seems to change. But as time passes, cracks start forming. The foundation weakens. The house, once solid and reliable, becomes unstable, vulnerable, on the verge of collapse. Your absence is exactly like that cornerstone. Without it, their emotional structure begins to crumble. The realization hits them hard. What they lost was much greater than they imagined. The Stoic wisdom of Epicurus rings true. Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. Their response to your silence isn't something you can control, nor is it something you should. Their struggle, their regret, their realization, that's their journey to take. Yours is different. You build resilience. You refine your character. You embrace silence because you know it is where clarity and strength are born. They will likely try to distract themselves. They'll seek out new connections, temporary thrills, or momentary distractions to fill the emptiness. But nothing will truly satisfy, because you were not merely entertainment or a distraction. You represented stability, peace, and authenticity. Temporary fixes can't replace something genuine. They may even question their decision, wondering, did I let go of something truly valuable? Adieu. And the longer the silence lasts, the harder this question becomes to ignore. In the silence, you thrive. You sharpen your mind, deepen your character, and grow stronger. You become someone entirely different, someone defined by dignity, discipline, and quiet confidence. Meanwhile, their emptiness deepens, louder each day. Silence, ironically, speaks clearly. Your absence constantly reminds them of your... In time, they will realize this painful truth. They didn't lose something trivial. They lost someone irreplaceable. Someone who needed nothing from them, yet offered everything. Someone who had the strength to leave quietly, without begging, without explanations, without bitterness. Someone they'll think about in quiet moments, late at night when the world grows silent and regrets whisper loudest. But by then you'll be miles ahead, stronger, wiser, more rooted in who you've become. And they'll finally understand the profound truth behind the saying, absence makes the heart grow fonder, but silence makes it ache louder. 3. Silence holds up the mirror. Here's something powerful that most people don't understand. When you step away quietly, you leave them face to face with the one person they can't outrun themselves. In the beginning, they might feel relief. No more uncomfortable talks, no more tension-filled silence, no more trying to read your thoughts or intentions. At first glance, that feels like freedom, like stepping outside after hours trapped in a crowded room. But that sense of freedom quickly fades. Why? Because without you around, they lose their favorite distraction. Suddenly, there's no one else to blame, no one to argue against, no one to deflect their discomfort onto. It's like a spotlight switching on in an empty theater. There's nowhere to hide. They're alone, staring directly into their own reflection, and the honesty of that moment can be unforgiving. Initially, they may ask themselves comforting questions, trying to justify their actions. Wasn't this what I wanted? Didn't they make me feel unhappy? Weren't things better this way? But silence doesn't allow illusions to linger. Soon doubts begin to surface. Thoughts once suppressed by anger, resentment, or pride suddenly rise clear and undeniable. What if I overreacted? Did I push away someone who genuinely cared? Maybe I wasn't perfect either. You see, that's the hidden power of your absence. Every moment you remain quiet, grounded, and focused on your growth. That mirror becomes clearer, and eventually they see you for who you truly were. Not the distorted image they built in their mind when they were hurt or angry, but the real you, the one who showed up consistently, who offered support, who cared even in difficult moments. As the philosopher Seneca once wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." They begin to realize their suffering came not from your actions, but from the distorted stories they created about you. Without your reactions to validate their narratives, they must face the uncomfortable truth. Perhaps their version of reality wasn't accurate at all. Your silence speaks loudly because it refuses to validate their illusion. You don't need to explain or defend yourself because your absence alone clarifies what words never could. By stepping back, you place responsibility squarely where it belongs, on their shoulders. Stoicism teaches this clearly. You only control yourself, your emotions, your reactions. How they handle your absence is their burden, their lesson. Consider it like removing a mirror from a funhouse. The distortions vanish, leaving behind a stark reality. Without you there to absorb their emotional outbursts or reactions, they're forced to reflect on their own behavior. Every unkind word, every unfair accusation, every cold shoulder becomes painfully obvious. They start remembering moments differently. Your patience, your calm presence, your quiet strength. These qualities they once overlooked or dismissed suddenly become precious, precisely because they're no longer available. Think of a mountain reflected in still water. Its true shape becomes perfectly clear only when the waves are gone. Your silence calms those emotional waves, revealing the true landscape of what existed between you and what they see now might hurt. Not because you're actively trying to hurt them, but because truth can sting deeply. A Stoic doesn't chase validation. You don't desperately seek approval or perform emotional gymnastics to be noticed. Instead, your self-worth comes from something deeper, your actions, your principles, the quiet dignity with which you handle life's challenges. Marcus Aurelius beautifully summarized this when he wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good person should be. Be one." You embody this by simply living your truth quietly and powerfully. They'll wonder why you're not reaching out, why you're not reacting, why you've chosen silence. But in your silence lies a profound answer. You respect yourself too much to beg for acknowledgement. Your quiet dignity speaks louder than any explanation ever could. It becomes undeniable proof of your strength and authenticity. Eventually, they'll recognize the magnitude of what they lost. A person who genuinely cared, who provided stability and warmth, who chose dignity over desperation. The emptiness left by your absence teaches them something invaluable, something they couldn't learn through words alone. Some people simply cannot be replaced. And while they grapple with this realization, you continue your journey. You become stronger, wiser, and increasingly comfortable in your silence because you understand a fundamental Stoic truth. Real strength isn't loud, aggressive, or desperate. Real strength is quiet, steady, and grounded. So let silence hold up the mirror. Let your absence speak volumes, because, in the end, the most powerful statement you'll ever make is the one you make when you calmly walk away, leaving them alone with the reflection they cannot escape. 4. Echoes of the past never stay silent. Memories don't rush in all at once. They creep in slowly, like shadows stretching at sunset. Subtle at first, then impossible to ignore. It might start with a song playing in the background of a cafe. One they forgot was tied to you until the first note hits. Or a familiar scent. Maybe the faint trace of your cologne lingering on a jacket they haven't worn in months. Even the places you used to go together, places that once felt so ordinary, start to feel different when they're standing there alone. That's how memories work. They whisper before they roar. At first, they're just small reminders, easy to brush off. But the longer you're gone, the heavier they become, each one pulling them back. Not just to you, but to the version of themselves that existed when you were around. And in that reflection, something shifts. They start to feel the weight of what was. A Stoic mind understands this. Memories are part of life, but they do not define you. You don't cling to the past, you don't rewrite it, and you don't torment yourself with endless what-ifs. You accept what was, take the lesson, and keep moving forward with clarity and purpose. As Seneca said, we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. And you, grounded in your own strength, know that no memory, no matter how sweet, is worth sacrificing your peace. But for them, it's different. Memories aren't just thoughts, they become weight. They carry the emotions they once ignored, the moments they took for granted, the little things they never thought they'd miss until they were gone. That's the nature of absence. It doesn't just remove a person, it reveals everything they overlooked. Time, once their ally in moving forward, becomes a constant reminder of what they lost. Picture someone walking through an empty house they once called home. The walls are the same, the furniture hasn't changed, but without the warmth of the past, it feels different. Colder, quieter, unfamiliar. That's what your absence does. It turns what was once familiar into something uncomfortably hollow. And the more time passes, the more valuable what you gave them starts to feel. Your presence, your steadiness, the way you handled life. It all starts to shine in comparison to what they're left with now. Maybe they thought you were replaceable, that someone else could fill the space you left. But replacements only highlight the difference. They don't erase it. This is the beauty of stepping back with grace. You don't have to prove your worth. Time and memories do it for you. And while you're out there growing, becoming stronger, becoming more in tune with yourself, they're left facing a truth they can't escape. Real connection doesn't fade with silence. It grows heavier. So let them feel it. Let those memories catch up to them one by one. Because someone who walks away with quiet strength is never forgotten. They are remembered in every silent moment, every familiar place, every unexpected memory that reminds them exactly what they lost. 5. Curiosity becomes restlessness. The less they know, the more their mind betrays them. At first, they might not think much of it. They tell themselves it's fine, that they don't need to know what you're doing, that they're moving on. But silence has a way of creeping in. When the world quiets down, late at night, in the pauses between conversations, in the moments when there's nothing left to distract them, that's when the questions start. Are they thinking about me? Have they already moved on? Why aren't they reaching out? These thoughts don't arrive all at once. They slip in slowly, like water seeping through cracks in a foundation. At first, they try to push them away, dismiss them. But the less information they have, the more their imagination takes control. What they don't know begins to haunt them. A Stoic mind understands this well. There is power in silence, mystery in absence. You don't owe explanations. You don't need to perform for an audience that no longer values your presence. You are not playing a game. You are simply living your life without the need for validation. But for them, that silence becomes a weight they can't put down. Every time they reach for their phone and there's nothing from you, their mind starts spinning. Are they seeing someone else? Why aren't they trying to fix this? Did I mean as much to them as they meant to me? Suddenly, you become the question they can't answer. And the harder they try to figure you out, the more mysterious you become. This is the paradox of silence. It forces them into restlessness. In a world where everyone overshares, where every thought, every feeling, every move is put on display, you become something rare, the one they can't check up on, the one who slipped away without explanation. No closure, no final conversation to package everything neatly, just silence. And that silence, it's louder than any words you could have said. The truth is, people fear uncertainty more than loss. If you had begged, if you had pleaded, if you had made it clear how much you still cared, they would have been able to categorize you, place you neatly in a box labeled, still waiting. But instead you vanished into the unknown. And now they have to sit with the one thing they never expected. Doubt. They expected you to react. They expected you to seek closure. They expected to still have some control over how this played out. But your silence takes that power away. It forces them to fill in the blanks, to guess, to wonder. And the more they wonder, the deeper the uncertainty grows. We suffer more in imagination than in reality, Seneca said. The difference between you and them is that you understand this. You don't suffer from not knowing, because you have no desire to know. You don't chase because you don't need to. Your value isn't determined by someone else's reaction to you. It's in the way you carry yourself, in the calm, in the quiet, in the way you disappear with grace and self-assurance. This is the strength of a Stoic mind, the ability to let go without explanation, to walk away with dignity, to understand that your absence speaks for itself. So let them wonder, let them sit in the uncertainty. Because a person at peace with themselves never needs to explain their silence, it explains itself. 6. When the puppet cuts the strings at first, they believed they had control. They thought you'd wait, checking your phone, hoping for a sign, holding on to every breadcrumb they might drop. They assumed you'd break under the weight of silence, that your patience would crumble into desperate attempts to win them back. That's the story many people tell themselves, that they hold all the cards, that your emotions revolve around their attention. But then something unexpected happens. You disappear, truly disappear. No explanations, no chasing, no attempts to prove anything. And with every passing day that you remain silent, the illusion of power they once had begins to crack. Suddenly, the control they thought was absolute starts to slip through their fingers. The predictable reactions they expected never come. The emotional strings they assumed still connected you to them have been cut. The realization sets in. They no longer have influence over you. This is where the pain begins. Not because they necessarily want you back, but because control wasn't just about power. It was about comfort. Knowing you were still there gave them security. It reassured them that no matter what, you were still affected, still waiting. That knowledge alone provided a sense of safety. But now that safety is gone, you've become someone they can't read, the one they can't predict, the one they no longer control. And there's nothing more unsettling than realizing that someone who once cared no longer reacts. A Stoic mind understands this well. You are not anyone's emotional puppet. You don't dance for attention. You don't chase for validation. You are your own anchor, steady in the storm, rooted in your own worth. Your value doesn't come from someone else's approval. It comes from how you carry yourself. with discipline, with purpose, with quiet confidence. And when they see that your silence doesn't break you, that their absence doesn't shake you, something shifts. The power they thought they had dissolves, replaced by a truth they never considered. You were never theirs to control in the first place. There is no revenge here, no bitterness, no need to prove anything. Your silence speaks for itself. Your detachment isn't coldness, it's clarity. You are no longer tied to their validation, no longer held hostage by the need for closure or recognition. And in that freedom, you become something they never expected, the one who got away and never looked back. 7. Time waits for no one, and neither do you. They sit there replaying every moment, questioning every word, trapped in an endless loop of wondering what went wrong. They believed you would freeze in place, orbiting their memory, waiting for a sign that it was safe to come closer again. That's the story they told themselves, that their absence would paralyze you. But the truth is, life moves forward and so do you. A Stoic mind doesn't resist change. It embraces it. You evolve, you grow, you adapt, not out of spite, not as some hidden message, but because that is simply who you are. You understand that the past is a place of reference, not residence. You don't live there. The only time worth existing in is the present, and you refuse to chain yourself to something that no longer serves you. You don't sit there refreshing old conversations in your mind, trying to rewrite history. You take the lesson, you own your part, and you move on. Head high, heart steady. Your growth isn't a performance. It isn't a carefully crafted signal designed to get their attention. It's simply the natural byproduct of someone who values themselves too much to stagnate. You don't grow to prove a point. You grow because standing still has never been an option. And then one day, not if, but when they finally look back, expecting to find you exactly where they left you, all they see is you're back, but you're not waiting, you're not even standing still. You're further ahead than they ever imagined, moving with purpose, with calm, with the quiet confidence of someone who doesn't need to be seen to know their worth. And that is the essence of true strength. Your value has never depended on being chosen. It has always been defined by how you carry yourself when you're not. So let them watch, let them wonder, let them realize too late that the person they walked away from is now someone they can no longer reach. And there is nothing more powerful than becoming the person who outgrew their absence, not to win them back, but because you never needed them to begin with. 8. When ego cracks, truth speaks at first. They convince themselves they're perfectly fine, maybe even better off without you. In their mind, walking away was an act of power, a bold statement of independence. They reassure themselves that you'll be the one who regrets it, the one who will eventually crumble in the silence, desperately trying to mend what they believe was broken. But pride, as strong as it seems, is a fragile shield. Over time, the weight of your silence begins to erode that protective barrier. Days turn into weeks, and with each quiet moment you maintain, the confidence they once clung to starts to crack. It's as if every silent hour chips away at the fortress they built around their heart, leaving behind a prison of unresolved emotions. Imagine their mind as a stage where an endless drama unfolds. A battle between the fierce clamor of their ego and the quiet, persistent ache of their heart. Initially, their ego shouts, "I'm in control. I made the decision, and it proves my strength." But as time passes and the silence deepens, that same heart, often subdued by bravado, begins to speak louder. They might find themselves questioning, did I misjudge the power of my own pride? Am I losing the very control I thought I had? Such questions echo in the empty halls of memory, where once every word and gesture from you held meaning. In the spirit of Stoic wisdom, consider the words of Epicurus. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. You are not punishing them with your silence. You are safeguarding your inner peace. It's a deliberate choice to focus on what you truly control yourself. While they battle between the echoing demands of their pride and the soft pleas of their heart, you simply move forward unshaken. Their internal struggle is like a storm raging within, where every suppressed emotion and unspoken regret collides violently with their sense of superiority. They believe that by holding on to that power, they could force you into submission, that your eventual capitulation would validate their worth. But what happens when reality doesn't bend to such expectations? What if, instead of breaking, you remain as steadfast as ever? The truth, as painful as it may be, is that no amount of silent suffering can change the fact that you were never there to be controlled. Their illusion of power slowly fades into a harsh reality. Your absence does not equate to a personal failure on your part. Consider a mighty tree that stands tall in the midst of a storm. Its branches may sway, and its leaves might scatter, but its roots run deep, anchoring it firmly in the earth. That is the essence of your stance. A deep, unwavering core that does not need to prove its strength through reaction or validation. You are not entangled in the messy tug-of-war between a fragile ego and a tender heart. Instead, you embody the principle that true power lies in self-mastery, in the quiet confidence of knowing your worth, regardless of external affirmation. They might wonder, what did I truly gain by holding on so tightly? Was it control, or was it merely an illusion? As each day passes, the mirror of your silence reflects back the reality that their pride, no matter how adamant, could not alter your inner peace. Their attempt to hold on to power, to have you orbit around their every word, becomes a self-imposed cage. And within that cage, every moment of quiet only amplifies the truth. You have already moved on, and your value has never been dependent on their attention. In the end, the battle between their ego and their heart is theirs to fight alone. You remain a beacon of stoic strength, calm, composed, and resolute. Your journey is not about winning over someone else's approval. It's about honoring your own path. The person who masters his emotions, who relinquishes the need for control, is the one who ultimately triumphs, not because he forced the other to bend, but because he recognized that his worth was never measured by someone else's fleeting validation. And so, as the echoes of their inner turmoil persist, you continue to walk forward, your head held high and your spirit untouched by the passing winds of doubt. 9. Regret rewrites the narrative at first. They stood firm in their decision to leave. They had a list of justifications, reasons why walking away made perfect sense. Perhaps they told themselves that you weren't right for them, or that they needed space to rediscover who they truly were. In those early days, their minds clung tightly to those explanations, and those reasons made them feel in control, confident, even proud of their choice. Yet as the silence stretched on and the days turned into weeks, that steadfast justification began to crumble under the weight of your quiet absence. Imagine a once solid wall built of convictions that over time starts to show cracks. With every silent moment, the sharp edges of those long-held beliefs soften. The flaws they once fixated on begin to blur, while the good, your steady presence, the comfort you brought, the sense of being truly seen, slowly rises to the surface. As Rumi once said, "Yesterday I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today I am wise, so I am changing myself." In that evolving silence, their inner story starts to be rewritten without you ever having to say a word. There comes a time when, in the quiet hours, memories and what-ifs converge into one relentless echo. They might start to wonder, did I misjudge? Did I let go of something truly valuable? These questions arise like the subtle chime of a clock in an empty room, persistent reminders of what once was. They may ask themselves, why does it hurt now when it felt so right then? The answer is simple yet profound. Time, with its patient, relentless march, has a way of reshaping our perception. You see, when you disappear with quiet strength, without bitterness, without trying to rewrite history or force your version of events, your absence becomes a canvas on which reality paints its honest picture. There is no need to argue your worth or plead your case. Instead, time, that unyielding force, becomes your greatest ally. As days morph into weeks and weeks into months, the silence in the space you once occupied grows louder. In that expanding void, the narrative shifts. You are no longer the person they convinced themselves was easy to leave. Instead, you become the one they realize, too late, they were never ready to let go of. Consider the image of a garden blanketed in frost. At first, the ice seems to encapsulate everything in a harsh, unyielding grip. Yet as winter wanes, tiny shoots begin to push through, revealing the vibrant life that lay dormant beneath. In much the same way, the initial justifications they clung to start to melt away, exposing the warmth and vitality of what you truly offered, a rare comfort, a stability unmatched by fleeting distraction. The silence, once a void, gradually becomes a mirror reflecting back the undeniable truth. You were a treasure, not a burden to be discarded. A Stoic knows that perception is everything. He understands that his worth is not defined by someone else's fleeting attention. Your silent retreat is not a tactic of revenge or a game meant to inflict pain. It is a manifestation of self-respect. It is a quiet declaration that you refuse to lower your standards or compromise your inner peace. As Epictetus wisely noted, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. And your reaction is simple. You remain unshaken, focused on your own growth, while they are left to grapple with the shifting landscape of their emotions. They might wonder, how could they possibly let such a strong presence slip away? Or what did I truly gain by holding on so tightly? The answer lies in the natural process of self-reckoning. Your absence forces them to confront their own vulnerabilities, to recognize that the very qualities they thought they controlled were illusions. The weight of regret becomes a heavy burden, one that lingers in quiet moments and in the corners of memories that refuse to fade. It is in these moments that they come to see that you were never an easy option. You were the one who never begged, never broke, and never lost yourself trying to hold on. Your graceful departure, marked by unwavering self-assurance, transforms into a potent reminder of what they sacrificed. The silence you maintained, free of any need for closure or explanation, speaks volumes about your inherent value. It tells a story of inner strength and quiet dignity, qualities that, once overlooked, now shine all the brighter in the absence of your presence. So let time work its magic. Let your silence allow them to rewrite their story, one where the initial certainty of leaving slowly gives way to the painful clarity of regret. And if in the quiet of their reflection, regret finds them, that burden is theirs alone, a personal reckoning with the weight of a lost treasure. Reflect on this truth. Embrace the power of your own silence and let it remind you that true strength is measured not by the noise you make, but by the quiet confidence with which you walk your own path. If this message resonates with you, share your insights and join the conversation on the profound impact of self-respect.